Hi everyone, this is Elias Martin of CollectingJapanesePrints.com. Welcome to Woodblock Wednesday, where every Wednesday we get together and discuss Japanese prints, paintings, history, and culture. This is actually the second attempt on this video. I was having some technical difficulties and decided to redo the video. So for those of you who watched the first one and are rewatching this one and thinking, well, this is not the same video, because it's not. So just love live TV. These things happen, but let's redo it and have a better, more in-depth conversation on today's topic. So today we're talking about one of my favorite Sosaku Hanga artists. His name is Saito, Kiyoshi Saito. And he, as most, if not all, Sosaku Hanga artists, and I won't go into the intricacies of it because in the early period it was a little bit different, but most Sosaku Hanga artists carved and printed their own work, and Saito certainly did that. He, in the earlier period, produced all of his work by himself, and he started working in the 30s, in the mid-1930s, and continued working throughout his life. He had a long life. He was born in 1907 and died in 1997. And he was pretty much working throughout his career, throughout his life, in a very long career. So there are designs he produced in the 90s, so he was certainly working towards the end of his life. And Saito left us a wonderful, long, extensive body of work. And for my particular area of collecting, my interest is his early period prints. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But today's conversation is also timely. There is a fantastic exhibition at the Ringling Museum of Art in Sarasota, Florida. And the exhibition showcases the extensive collection at the Ringling of Saito's work. And that's because of a recent, very generous gift by Chuck and Robin Citron, who donated more than 200 Saito designs to the museum. And so the exhibition really showcases Saito's body of work. I'm also one of the lenders to the exhibition. I've loaned about a half dozen or so early period prints of Saito's that are pretty rare. And some of them I've highlighted in previous Woodblock Wednesdays. But today we'll be talking about an early period print not on display at the Ringling because it's in my home right now. And so we'll discuss it. We'll discuss Saito's early period work, his influences, and some catalogs and reference books that, of course, you should look out for if you're interested in Saito's work. So without further ado, let's go to the table and have a look. So as I said, this is a take two. So basically, this is an early Saito work. The print is called Flower and Girl. It's dated 1948. And Saito often reprinted earlier designs later in his career, and he would sometimes indicate, design produced or design created this year, whatever year that is, and printed whatever year. In this case, there isn't that notation. And also the signature, which is an earlier type of signature with a little loop at top, is consistent with the dating. So this is how I know this print is printed in 1948. The other aspect about this print that I know reflects the date is the printing. The printing is very thick. It is very sort of expressive. His later work, the emphasis is not on the printing as much as the design. And in this case, we have both design and printing working together to create a really compelling work. So I want to point out the wonderful surface that is on this print. The colors are applied quite thickly onto the paper, and that really creates a strong painterly effect. And that is no coincidence. Actually, early on in Saito's career, he often called himself a frustrated painter. And that's because he started his artistic career in painting, and did also some commercial work doing signs and other things like that. So painting was always at the foundation of his artistic sort of skill set. However, he moved from painting and started producing prints in the mid 1930s upon seeing Sosaku designs. And I think what he was attracted to was this sort of conversation of what was done in painting and how it's translated into the printed medium. And I think that's something that we certainly see in his early period work. And so one of the things I want to point out is that this early period work is influenced by several areas. One I want to say is that Saito in this design and in several of these like flower and girl motifs is I think he's thinking back to the Nabis movement, which was a French European movement with oil painters of, what's his name, Bernard and Vuillard, Edward Vuillard, and others. He's also influenced by Gauguin, and these artists were interested in producing sort of art that was decorative, but no less important. And so they emphasized backgrounds that were really influenced by Eastern art, Orientalism, and particularly Japanese prints. So it's interesting to see the influence, the winds of influence carried from Asia, particularly Japan, to Europe, and then from Europe back to Asia. And so Saito, I know, was really influenced by the Nabis, and so the Nabis artists were producing oil painting that looks so similar to this. Texture was important for them, color. And then also you would normally see women in a home sewing or doing things, and it was really the juxtaposition of the woman and a floral pattern. And so that's what we have here. Now, in Saito's case, I don't read the background as a pattern of wallpaper. I actually read it as real live vegetation, and I do think this is plants that he was thinking of sort of reproducing the effect of real plants because of the texture. And they just have this vivid sort of lifelike quality to them. And so I don't see them as a wallpaper motif. But certainly Saito was thinking of those artists. Another influence that actually is something fairly recent that crossed my mind, a colleague of mine and a curator and a researcher mentioned to me that she thought that that Onotado Shige was a big influence on Saito. And so, I want to point out that Chiaki Achioka pointed this out to me, and I think she's right. And I think it's a wonderful, brilliant observation. And when I look at these prints, particularly this early period work, this texture of the dark that was sort of printed first, and then the colors printed over that dark, that's very Onotado Shige. And these fresh, bright, vivid colors that are almost kind of soft and mushy, that's also very early Onotado Shige. So this is a really wonderful early work showcasing Saito's early influences. Now, I'm going to come in on the print so you could really see the texture and the colors. Yeah, it's a great design. It's a really great design. Now, I want to highlight something. First of all, I pulled 3 really important and useful reference books when we're discussing Saito. This was published by the Saito Museum in 1997. This was published by the Saito Museum in 2003. And this book was just recently published by the Ringling Museum of Art in conjunction with the exhibition Saito Kyoshi Graphic Awakening. The book highlights, about 100 or so designs by Saito. Many of them are from, the vast majority are from Chuck and Robin Citron's generous donation to the Ringling. And as luck will have it, I just pulled out the page, and this is the same design that I wanted to showcase from this book. Now, this print is from Chuck and Robin Citron's collection that was donated to the Ringling, and this design is really early. It's an earlier impression that varies from this design, and the reason that it varies is if you look at the face, there's no shading, there's no shadow in the face. And here we have an interesting sort of shadow across the face that Saito has added later. And I'm thinking, it's interesting. It has a very strong painterly effect to the shadow. And I also kind of think that this effect anticipates Saito's haniwa designs that came only a few years after 1948. And for those of you who don't know, haniwa is a archaic Japanese pottery that was done during the Kofun period, and basically it's tomb pottery and other kinds of pottery that have been found, and that pottery has almost kind of a modernist sort of abstract quality to it. And the face that Saito has rendered on his figure has a kind of a strong quality that you see. It's basically anticipating Saito's interest in haniwa and how he will later treat those designs in woodblock prints. So I think it's pretty cool. And of course, when we look at the earlier version, it's quite different. So anyway, I want to point out that this book is the best book in the English language treating Saito. Certainly these two books are fantastic as reference books. They have a lot more images of Saito's work, and I highly recommend them. They're available on my website bookstore. Certainly, if you're interested, I'd be happy to help you out with that. But this book is the best book available on Saito to date. The essays are fantastic, and it really highlights the exhibition quite well. So if you can't make the exhibition, which closes in Sarasota on August 15th, then at the very least, you should buy the book. In fact, you should buy the book anyway if you're going to the exhibition. And so the essays here are great. So I highly recommend it. And I'm just going to zoom in so you can look at the print one last time. I just love that texture. And this is one of the reasons why I collect Saito's early work. The texture on the surface of his early prints, it's just fantastic. And again, it looks like an oil painting. I'm going to back up so you can kind of see it. The print's quite large, by the way. It's about 2.5 feet, maybe 3 feet by 2 feet. It's quite large. So I want to mention a few things before we go. As I mentioned, Saito, there's an exhibition on Saito at Sarasota, the Ringling Museum of Art. So if you happen to be in that area, I highly recommend paying a visit. But also, there is an upcoming panel discussion next week on Tuesday, which is August 3rd at 9:30 Chicago time, Central Standard Time, 10:30 Eastern. So if you're interested in joining the panel discussion, Chuck and Robin Citron will be on the panel. I've been asked. I've loaned about a half dozen or so early Saito prints, and I'm very happy to contribute my share in this conversation. And also Allison Tolman, who's another dealer, but also grew up knowing Saito, and she's going to share some insights and maybe some stories about Saito. So it's wonderful, and the panel discussion is going to be moderated by the curator Rhiannon Pageant, and she's done a fantastic job curating this exhibition, putting together a fantastic group of Saito prints. And if I haven't said this enough, and I think I said this a couple times in the previous video that did not get posted, but I'll say this again. This Saito exhibition is probably the best ever mounted, period. And it is certainly the largest ever produced in the United States. There is the Saito Museum in Fukushima, and they're very active at showcasing Saito's work. However, they don't have all of the pieces on display at the museum. And in fact, some of these early period prints, which do come from me, greatly add to this exhibition, but also all of the other prints that Chuck and Robin Citron have added to the museum's collection. I mean, it basically makes the Smithsonian. It basically makes the Ringling the one of the world's largest museums with holdings on this artist. So it's fantastic to be able to participate in something like this. So if you want to listen to some collectors and dealers talk about Saito, please join us next week. I will add the link to the bottom in the comments so you could join us. And of course, I feature Saito's work on my website. I offer it for sale as well as reference books. So if you're interested in learning more about this artist, please visit my website, collectingjapaneseprints.com. Visit my bookstore. There's several books on Saito there. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to private message me. I'm happy to field any questions you might have, or I encourage you to post questions below, and there other people will be able to see what our conversation's about. So anyway, I want to thank all of you for joining me on this redo of the Woodblock Wednesday featuring the work of Kiyoshi Saito. I look forward to seeing all of you next week on Woodblock Wednesday. So between then and now, visit my website, collectingjapaneseprints.com. And of course, all of these videos are archived on my website. And before I go, I want to acknowledge all of the people watching on YouTube now, that I've started archiving and posting these videos on YouTube. And so for those of you joining me on YouTube, welcome. These videos are produced live, off the cuff, and this is why sometimes we have technical difficulties. But these are live, and I then post them on YouTube for you to be able to enjoy later. So welcome to our conversation, and thanks all of you for joining me on Woodblock Wednesday. Until we see each other again,